Hi guys, DerpyMoose99 here. Today what I want to do is a tutorial episode on how to start on Banished megamod 8 using the forest node strategy. And just before I get started here, I want to acknowledge that I watched an excellent series of videos from Pinstar on YouTube years ago, and I believe he titled his build the Crossroads build. It was a pretty neat concept. I really liked it and really appreciated him putting that video out there. And I've been playing around with it for, as long as I've been playing Banished, trying a number of variations. So today I'd like to show you how I do it, and let's get started. So we're going to start paused. Alright, now I've got this on planes just so we don't have to mess around with terrain. So I'm going to use this gatherer hut, part of the megamod pack. And okay, because our cart's here, I'm actually going to put a road in just to kind of guide us here. And I'll bring it so that the circle just edges out to the cleared area there. Alright, there's the gathering hut. Now next what I'm going to do is put the small barn, it's got good capacity for its size, one away from the gatherer. Also put that on hold. Now I'm going to do the stockpile, general stockpile, because we're going to be clearing rock, iron ore, and logs to some extent. And I'm going to put that even with the barn and make a 4x4. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to place in a forester lodge beside the 4x4 and then one up, so a space of one between. And we'll pause that guy. The next building we're going to put in here is a hunter's cabin. And that guy can go there. And I'm just going to delete the road portion that goes off there. We don't need that. Alright, so that's the basic forest node there. And then I'm going to use log cabins here. So under Colonial Charter log cabin, I like the ones with overhang. But for the sake of the tutorial, we'll just bang them in. Now you can typically start with 5 or 6. I like to start with 6 in the first forest node, just because I like to later add an herbalist and maybe a flower gatherer or flax gatherer. Alright, so we have 6 houses, 6 log cabins I should say, and they are one apart from the barn and the stockpile, and then one apart from each other, directly across from each other. Now I just do that because of my, I guess, behavioral, my personality, but you can lay that out any way you want. Now everything's paused except the stockpile. Now the next thing we're going to do is maybe say 3 out. I'm going to put a 5x8 stockpile this way. Okay, and we're going to prioritize this stockpile because they'll need that for building. And then I'm going to look around for opportunities to put what I call free stockpiles in. So stockpiles that you can place just for gathering of trees and rocks in areas where the laborers don't have to build them. Because in the beginning, it's going to be a bit of a rush here to not die before the winter sets in. So just around the circles here, if there's any spots for, even 2x3s or 2x2s if you need to. Just so there's places to drop stuff that's cleared. Okay, now we're going to hit the wrong key, and then we're going to designate some trees. Sort of in this area here. And we're going to designate some stone that's inside the circle, because we're going to want to clean that anyway. Alright, so we have trees designated, we have stone designated, we have a road laid out. We have our large stockpile in, and a bunch of smaller ones. We've prioritized this forest node stockpile. Now if we bring up our event log and our statistics, and I'm going to bring up the large one here. Okay, we're starting with 8 people, so we're going to go 2 builders. Now the strategy here is by the time the 2 builders complete this road that runs, from the forest node out to the cart, the laborers should have gathered enough trees and enough rocks to start building houses, or so the theory goes. So we're going to go on 10, and we're going to let it rip. Okay, there's our forest node stockpile. Okay, let's watch the builders here. Okay, it looks to me like that road is almost done. So for what we're initially going to build here, it's going to be the gatherer's hut, the small barn, and just so we can use the priority tool effectively, we're going to use this log cabin. Now remember, you only need 1 cabin or 1 house to survive the first winter. Even if there's 4 or 5 families as there is now, they can share a cabin as far as warming up with firewood and food. That's assuming we have food and firewood. So gatherer's hut, small barn, and log cabin is our first build, and we're going to prioritize that, and we're going to do it multiple times, which doesn't help but makes me feel better. So we'll let that go, and we're also going to increase our builders to 4 or maybe even 5. Okay, and the reason for the road here is so they can go back and forth to the cart, because they're going to go there for food and stuff. Okay, don't forget to turn off the low resource warning, because that's irritating. Alright, so there's our gatherer's hut and our small barn coming up. We have the gatherer's hut. We have 10 people, so we are going to go 2 people to start with in the gatherer's hut, but we're going to watch the food, and I bet we're going to have to increase to 3 or maybe even 4 fairly quickly. But let's use the maximum number of laborers and builders for now. Okay, so the barn and the cabin. Now the reason for the barn is so the gatherers, as they gather food, they have a place to go that's a lot closer than this cart down here. And the cabin, of course, for warm up. Now in the beginning, on hard, you get 100 firewood or so, and some food and some tools. So by building the one house, there's an immediate location where that firewood can be taken to and used. Now the next step is kind of risky. So the next step would be a wood chopper. But in this strategy, what I like to do is build one of these puppies, a sawmill. Now the reason I do that is you can switch it between firewood and lumber. So in megamod, there's a lot of neat things you can build with lumber. So to me, and I should explain the risk more clearly too, this is 110 logs. So a lot of the choppers are a lot smaller. So you can make firewood choppers very easily. This is a risk in terms of resources and gathering the logs. But I find the added flexibility in the beginning. You can build quite a few things that are advantageous, and you can switch over to salt box houses and things that use lumber. So I like the flexibility of the sawmill, but I want to acknowledge that it is a risk. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, or it doesn't work for you, try it and you kill the whole town. Build something smaller, for firewood. But this is the way I'm going to go, and I'm going to prioritize that as well as a few trees. We'll go 4 and 4 in our builders and gatherers, or laborers, sorry. Alright, we have enough logs, so let's be specific here. Now while they're working on that, I'm going to put in a barn, a larger barn, and I'm not going to have them build it or even bring the resources yet, but I want to do it for a layout. Now the theory with this barn is, if this smaller barn in the forest fills up, you have a place for the gatherers to bring the food. Now if you get in that kind of situation, you're probably not manning your vendors and your marketplaces properly, but still it's a good thing to have overflow. And this barn will be used for things like tools and other things that are going to be manufactured out in this area as well too. Okay, so our sawmill is up. Now you have to remember to switch it from lumber to firewood at this stage. Otherwise you'll be busy making lumber while your people freeze to death. So we're going to go, actually, right in the beginning, we're going to go 2 people. And we're actually going to go up to 400 fuel. So the idea here is we're going to keep collecting trees. We want to quickly build some firewood. And then at the right moment, we'll have a surplus of fuel or firewood. So it'll be safe to switch over to lumber. And at that time, I'll probably take the second person out of the sawmill. Okay, I notice our food's at 498. So I think we'll go down by a builder, up by a gatherer. So this, in theory, is almost enough to survive the winter. We have a house, we have a barn for the gatherer, we have 3 people working in the gatherer, we have a very fruitful circle for the gatherers, and we have 2 people busily making firewood. So the next thing that's needed to actually complete or ensure the survival through the winter is tools. Now this is not necessarily related to the winter or the weather, but if you run out of tools, it's a death spiral that quickly will lead to starvation. So if we look at this, it's 32 logs, 55 stone, which is a lot. We currently only have 29, and 32 ore. So I'm going to put that there just to place it. And what we're going to do is over here, so under the tools and forge area, right at the end is a tiny workshop. Now this one will make tools out of logs, tools out of stone and logs, tools out of iron and logs, and it will also make coats out of leather. And it's only 24 logs to build. So you can try building the blacksmith, and I've done it successfully lots of times, but it is a resource hog. So a good safety strategy here is to start just with this tiny workshop and have it build some stone and wood tools, or wood tools if you want. Okay, so we've got food, we've got firewood, and once we have tools in production here, then we're going to build the rest of these houses, and be cognizant that we need to keep gathering up trees for logs for firewood and also for tools. Alright, so there's our tiny workshop. Now here you can see a selection of recipes. So wood may make more sense, but I just have a psychological problem with making tools out of wood only. So I'm going to go for stone and logs to make tools. I'm going to make this limit, say 25. What you don't want to do is make 200 tools and use up all your log supply when you need it for firewood. So we'll go 25, we'll put a worker in there. Looking at our food, we're 500. So let's go down on builders and let's max out the gatherers. Now at this point, you have enough basically to ensure survival. So the question is your population going to go quickly? Is the 4 gatherers enough for food? So you can at this point build the hunter's cabin, and this gives you extra insurance for food supply. Now I think that 4 gatherers in this scenario is going to be sufficient, although there's a lot of ground clutter, there's a lot of stone and a lot of iron. But let's put the hunter's cabin over here and leave it paused. Storage barn is paused, and the blacksmith is paused. We have 11 people, which is going to be, well, it's going to require 6 houses. So let's unpause all 5 of the log cabins, and let's just put them over here just to see who joins. Alright, and let's build those cabins. And let's make sure we have some additional trees designated. And maybe as well some additional stone. Now the log cabins only need 8 each, but we are building 5 of them, which is 40. Okay, those 2 workers in the sawmill are keeping up on the firewood demand. Our food has grown to 600. Now the food will diminish here as these log cabins get built. The people that move in will move food into the cabin, so we might see this dip. But there are 4 busy gatherers there, and with the houses being close to the gatherer, the reason why the houses are in the forest node is so the gatherers have a very short trip to house, so they maximize their time that is spent gathering up food. I kind of mumbled that one, but if you get the idea. Alright, so we have 2 more log cabins, 3 more log cabins. Okay, logs running low, that's because we're using a lot for the cabins and we're also making a lot of firewood. So, if this falls too low, we'll throw a priority in on gathering up the logs. But it looks like they're keeping pace. Okay, our tools, I've got 21 tools and we're out of stone. So we'll stop work on that one for now. Now there's a nice chunk of iron ore here, and we need 32 to build the blacksmith. And this spawn actually has a lot of stone, so we should be okay to build the real blacksmith here shortly. Okay, there's our last log cabin. Now I'm just going to pause here and quickly go through the cabins. So we have, okay, a couple there, and they have a child that's old enough to move out on their own. A child that's old enough to move on their own. 3 kids. Alright, so there's a female and a female there, so that actually would require 2 more houses eventually here, or fairly quickly. These log cabins will hold 5 people. What you want to make sure is you never get 5 people, you never have a 3rd adult in the log cabin. So as soon as somebody turns an adult, get them a house, get them moved out, and leave space behind for future siblings. Okay, but because they're 2 females, it's not as much of a rush. But we do need to start thinking about building out here. But our food has fallen to 147, and that's primarily because all the food went into the houses. So we should see that build up. But I think because we have logs and stone right now, for safety's sake, we're going to build the hunter's cabin. And this workshop down here, as I said earlier, will do hide coats out of leather. So we'll keep that around even if we build, or when we build, the blacksmith for tools. So this guy can make hide coats once we have the hunters in and working. Alright, we're late winter, early spring. Okay, we survived the winter. Okay, let's get that hunting cabin up. Yeah, while they're working on the hunting cabin, now the overall strategy here would be to get the iron and the rocks out of the circles here for the gatherer and the forestry node and the hunter. So because we're going to be wanting some iron ore for the blacksmith, we'll designate that portion of it and we'll prioritize it. Now I'm going to throw 2 people in the hunting cabin here. So we have a max hunting cabin, or for me, I consider 2 in the hunting cabin max. I've never really found that the third one buys you much, although you can throw it in there, especially if time's desperate for food and you have the manpower. But that should bring our food up fairly rapidly. I say that just as it falls to 0, but if we look at this stockpile, we have over 40 iron ore. So let's look down at this blacksmith. 55 stone, 32 iron ore. Now, inside of the circle, I'm going to designate more stone for collection and a little bit more iron ore. Okay, our food's gone right to 0, which is a little bit scary, but the houses will have food, so not to worry. Now this will help too with clearing the iron ore and the rocks out of the circle. It'll leave more room for natural food to grow for the gatherer, and more room for deer and stuff for the hunter. So there's our blacksmith. We're down to 11 tools. So we're going to go in here, we're going to use rough tools, which is iron ore and logs. Okay, so that stops us from using up our stone. And the only use for iron ore right now will be this. So I find it's good to have the stone for construction and use the iron ore for tools. So we'll make that rough tools, 1 log, 1 iron ore. Keep the limit at 25 for now, and we'll put a blacksmith in. Okay, our logs are pretty good at 150 and stone's pretty good, so let's build this storage barn. Okay, and while that's building, let's have a look in the barn here and see if we have any leather. No leather showing yet, so in hunting cabin, no, they haven't got any leather yet. Duck meat. No deer, but they have duck meat. Okay. So if you were playing this through, you'd watch, for leather. Once you have a supply of leather, you can turn this on briefly, make hide coats till your leather supply runs out. All right, there's our storage barn. Okay, so let's build the forester lodge, although we're not going to use it right away. No, actually, cancel that. We'll pause that. Now, what I want to do here is get rid of the storage cart so we can lay out the town properly, now that we've got this barn here. But what will happen is all our tools are stored in here, or a bunch of our tools anyway, so we don't want to go into a tool shortage. So before you designate the cart for termination, up your limit here from say 25 to 50, and what that'll do is make sure the blacksmith is working in here and cranking tools out. Okay, then you can go ahead and make this a priority to get rid of that. Now we have 384 firewood, so I'm going to switch this over to lumber. And I want to make 100 would be nice, just to have some flexibility for playing with things. Okay, throw some streets in just to show what we're doing. And I won't go all the way through to build it, but if you use the 1-room schoolhouse here, 10 logs, 20 stone, and 45 lumber, put it in something like that. Now, I like to build my school at this point. I know there's probably different opinions on when to build the school, but we have lots of food, we have housing, although we need 2 more houses for those folks. And we have basically everything we need for survival for the near term anyways. And what I would probably do is lay in a couple salt box houses for those people that are in the cabins here and need to move out. Okay, so food's up and rising. At some point you want to back off on your food collection before you fill out your warehouses. So from here, the next steps in my mind would be to get rid of all the stone and iron out of the circles here. Start thinking about building the forest lodge and put 1 or 2 people on planting. That'll get some trees being planted, which builds, helps the gatherer. Food grows under trees and stuff. It also puts you in a position down the road to turn the forester on cutting, so you can have a log supply. In case you wanted to build some more forest nodes out here. You don't want to keep chopping and chopping in an ever-widening circle, although you can. But if you build, get some planters in the forest lodge, you'll get to the point where you can reliably pull logs out of there pretty easily. And the other thing I would do, and I won't do it now, or I won't build it now, is I would put a market in somewhere like that. So what you've built with the forest node strategy is basically food, a future towards log production, and also you can put herbalist in here or whatever you want. Out here you started your town site where there'll be a central market, there's be some houses, your blacksmith for tools, your sawmill for logs or for firewood and for lumber, a little mini workshop for coats, although as you go here you'd want to build out tailors. Okay, so that's my variation of the starting strategy that I call the forest node strategy. I hope that helps, and I'd appreciate any comments down below. It's been Derpy Moose 99 here. Thank you very much, and have a great day.